Our next speaker is Natalie McLennan. I don't know if you recognize the name, but through all of the scandal of her unmasking as the Big Apple's costliest escort, the thing that I admire most about Natalie is that she refused to betray the high-powered and, generally speaking, good-looking older men that she was paid to have fun with. This is her quote, and it really is quite admirable. She said, "That would hurt people. Why would I want to break up a family?" So, who can resist someone who was previously a high-class hooker with a heart of gold? She refers to her time in the business as a capitalist adventure in post-feminist relationship dynamics. I love that. I love that. And of course, my nationalist heart beats with pride because she's a girl from Montreal. Natalie, come on out here.
Hi. So nice to meet you. Good afternoon. I'm going to talk about a few things today. I'm going to tell you my story. I'm going to talk a little bit, ouch. Don't wear heels. I'm going to talk a little bit about labels and how damaging they can be. But most importantly, I'm going to talk about redemption. Not necessarily what it means to redeem yourself to other people, but what real inner personal redemption is. So my name is Natalie McLennan, and I'm an author. This is the book that I wrote and published. The Price: My Rise and Fall as Natalia, New York's #1 escort. Yes, I was an escort. I'll let that sink in for a few seconds. I'll let everybody have their personal, emotional reaction to this information. Yes, that's me on the cover, and yes, all the information contained in the book is 100% true and accurate. It all happened. Back in 2005, a guy named James Fry caused one of the biggest controversies of the year with his book, A Million Little Pieces. A book that was marketed as a memoir/autobiography, but was later proved to be more fiction than fact. So unlike James, thesmokinggun.com won't be disproving any of my claims, and Oprah won't be yelling at me for deceiving America. It all happened. And James and I are friends, and he said it was okay if I made that joke, so I won't be getting yelled at or sued by him either. So, now that you know I was an escort, wait, the baby picture doesn't work for this. Okay, so now that you know I was an escort, I have a question. How does that make you feel about me? Do you assume that I'm a person, okay, do you assume that I'm a person with no morals or values? Do you assume that I'm uneducated? Do you have strong feelings about this whole escort thing, maybe strong and negative feelings? Or maybe you're just intrigued. So, I was born to William and Susan McLennan of Montreal in 1980. I have an older brother, Brent, and my mother, I don't know where she is, she's here somewhere. My mother will tell you that I was beautiful and special and very bright, but then I'm sure all of your moms would say the same about you. I achieved some great things growing up. I was a child actor, appearing in plays and musicals from the age of 11. I was the 1996 tap dancing champion of Canada. I danced, and I'm not going to tap dance. I'm not tap dancing. So I danced with Gregory Hines at the Montreal Jazz Fest. And most importantly, I was considered for the cast of the Mickey Mouse Club the same year that Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears joined the show. But at the time, I was devastated. I cried myself to sleep for weeks. But I'm really glad that I wasn't cast in that show, because if I'd been under the thumb of Disney, I think I'd have rebelled 10 times more than I did. I'd have given Britney a run for her money. So, behind This is kind of the cliche part of my story. So behind my big smiles, there was a very big sadness. My father abandoned our family when I was less than a year old, and I never saw him again. This is actually the only photo I have of my father and I together. And even as a child, I knew there were stereotypes. I knew that I was the poor little girl from a broken home, but I've never done what other people expect me to do, to be who other people expect me to be. I wanted to fight and prove everyone wrong. Part of me wanted to become famous so that my father could see that he was the one missing out by not having me in his life, instead of always feeling like it was the other way around. So I graduated high school with honors, and I'd especially like to point out that I won the High School Leaving Award for having achieved the highest grade in moral and religious education. It's a class and subject I excel in. So, I had great friends, and I was really quite normal. I went on to study theater at the prestigious Dome Theater School of Dawson College, and I graduated in 3 years. So, I was 20 and ready to fulfill my dreams. I didn't know how that was gonna happen, but I was nothing if not determined. I got myself a great agent, a great headshot, and I landed a few small parts. Then I went to New York for a vacation, and I met a director on the street, and she asked me to audition for her play. And on the corner of 52nd and 2nd Avenue, in front of the Neighborhood Playhouse Theater School, I had my first New York moment. My fairy tale moment. It was magic, I swear. I was standing there, and she asked me to audition, and I was so freaked out, I almost ran away. But I didn't. I saw an opportunity, and I said, yes, thank you. I will take this. So I auditioned, she cast me in the show, and I literally moved to New York overnight. It was September of 2000. And I bought into everything New York City was selling. The clothes, the nightlife, the body type. I was like 15 pounds lighter than I am now. I didn't eat carbs for like 3 years. So I also bought into their biggest gross domestic product, sex. Nothing sells better than sex. Well, except maybe the iPad, but they didn't have the iPad in 2004. They had Paris Hilton's sex tape and a million other celebrities building careers on sex and being famous. I thought, I can definitely do that. So everything was moving and going really well, and then all of a sudden in my personal life, things got really, really bad. My then boyfriend, an investment banker and MIT grad, he lost his job around 9/11. He lost his job, he started drinking and started hitting me. And this was my second New York moment. So instead of all the adrenaline and excitement I felt when I was this young actress, I was hit with all these other emotions: pride, fear, shame, and worst of all, desperation. So I wandered the streets of New York, trying to decide what to do, even though in the back of my mind, secretly, I'd already figured it out. I met this guy at a party who owned a really high-end escort agency. And I'd listened to his pitch and let him put his number in my phone. It was, make people happy and make lots of money. At the time, I just laughed. But with the number dialed, I changed my life forever, pretty much. So, I just have a question now. How much would you do it for? Right? $5,000? $50,000? If a good-looking stranger, and most of my clients were good-looking, smart, successful strangers, so if a good-looking stranger offered you a suitcase of money to have sex, would you do it? I know, most of the guys are saying yes, right? Okay, the reason I think this question has value is because it can help you maybe relate to this story a little bit, right? It's not something most people would ever ask themselves, but asking yourself the question might make my choice seem less out there. So I became Natalia. In 4 years, my headshot went from the previous one to this one. This was my publicity shot as an escort. So once I was in it, I was earning about $20,000 a week, and my life went into warp speed. And in the end, some people in the entertainment industry heard about this young actress / escort named Natalia and decided that they wanted to shoot a reality show. So within days, I was shooting a pilot for VH1 about my life. That's right. I decided it would be a good idea to shoot a reality series about what most people would never mind do on TV. And then I started doing interviews for Entertainment Tonight, CNN. I mean, I was everyone's favorite interview. But then one Friday morning, I was woken up by the NYPD. And they put me in handcuffs, and they read me my rights. So then, it seems the DA was not amused with my media stardom. So even though I'd been careful not to ever publicly admit having accepted money for sex, they managed to charge me with money laundering for my involvement with New York Confidential, the agency that I was working for. So, but I forgot about this. So this was actually what prompted the district attorney. This was the cover of New York Magazine, July 2005. They wanted my story. And again, it was an opportunity to make people ask questions. I mean, it was on the way to what I thought was achieving this acting career. But there was also the part of me that was a little fed up with the American way, with, how in mainstream media, and I'm really sorry, but right-wing politics, most of what is preached has nothing to do with how most people live, especially powerful people. So I ended up in Rikers Island, New York's most infamous jail. And I stayed there for a month. And that was one of the headlines when I was in jail, which didn't endear me to the other inmates, that's for sure. And this photo, I questioned including this photo in my presentation at all because, to be honest, it's really hard for me to look at because it represents drug addiction and pain. So I'd already had this sort of party lifestyle in New York, but once I was released from prison, I hit lows I'd never even heard of. I had no money, no job, a criminal record, and now a drug addiction. So the whole thing was just a mess. And then I got a call from the one person who was in more pain than even I was, my mother. And she told me she'd been diagnosed with breast cancer. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. And I finally refound myself. In that moment of crisis, the person that I am came out. And I told my mom that we would get well together. And I meant it. I went to the DA and I told him, listen, I have to go home to Canada. My mom is sick. And he said yes. I didn't have money for rehab. I detoxed myself. It was really hard, but I did it. So I think it's a testament, and everyone can relate to this, that in those moments of crisis, you do what you have to do. So I came back to Canada, and the news was good. My mom's treatments went well, and everything was okay. And I was left with 7 years worth of the most vivid memories, good and bad, racing around my head and my heart. And I figured that the best way to turn this monster pile of beautiful and painful stuff into something that I could be really proud of was to publish a book about it. So I worked with a literary agent, and I signed a publishing contract, and not that one. Anyway, so I wrote my book. And so just to touch on a few of the things I wanted to talk about. So labels. Please don't label people by their pasts. Please don't call me a hooker. I know I'm the one standing up here talking about this, but we're a work in progress. I'm trying to evolve as a person. So when people still call me an escort or a hooker, it hurts my feelings. To be honest, it's kind of BS. We should see people for who they are. And in addition to that, a hooker is a victim, someone who should be given help so that she can see her true potential. I am not an advocate for the sex industry. While I was in it, yeah, it was fun, it was fine, everything was good. And then dealing with the consequences almost killed me. So I'm not up here promoting the sex industry in any way whatsoever. It's that industry is full of every kind of abuse, pain, and suffering. It really saddens me when I see young girls today and some of the choices they're making without knowing the potential consequences. This was but a portion of my life. So, like I said, as much as I'm the person up here talking about it, I only ask to be able to move on and to evolve without rejecting or hiding from the truth that is my past. Thanks very much.